There was this elderly woman that came to Crown Heights to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Rebbe on Sundays would spend time giving out dollars to give forth to tzedakah, to charity. But it would be that moment that you could interact with a tzaddik, with a holy individual, and people came from near and far for that moment of interaction with the Rebbe. And the line at times could stretch for quite a distance. And this elderly woman waited online for 3 hours. And by the time it came to her time online, she says to the Rebbe, Rebbe, my dear Rebbe, I've been waiting online for 3 hours, and I'm very tired. But you, Rebbe, you're here all day. You're standing on your feet from morning to night, and you do this every Sunday. How is it that you're not tired? And the Rebbe answered the woman saying, when you're a diamond dealer, you never get tired of looking at your diamonds. Each and every single Jew that passes by me, I'm seeing a diamond. And when you see diamonds all day, you never get tired. And that's the theme of today's talk, diamonds. The Rebbe saw that diamond in each and every single one of us. You know, historians like to look at pivotal moments in time. There are volumes upon volumes upon volumes of history books. You can go to a library, look up history, amazing amount of books on history. Go to Amazon, put in history. Well, it's going to ask you, you want American history, you want European history, African history, which era of history? It's endless. But there are those historians that like to focus on what moved history, what moment triggered history. And sometimes those moments could be simple moments that lasted perhaps a day or even an hour, but it changed everything that came thereafter for the next 100, possibly 500 years. Pivotal moments of history. Let's take some examples here and let's focus on Jewish history for a while. Pivotal moments of Jewish history. What event takes place that changes everything that comes thereafter? A simple example would be God comes to Abraham when he's 75 years old and he says, Lech lecha, I want you to leave your father's house and go to the land that I will show you. And Abraham leaves and eventually makes his way to the promised land. Everything in existence from that one moment is different because of this one pivotal moment. One simple story, but everything that came thereafter changed. We can pick another example. Moses at the burning bush. That one encounter, everything thereafter in all of history changed because of that pivotal moment of time. We can continue to go. We can talk about Sinai revelation, pivotal moment of time. Joshua entering the promised land. So historians have a field day in trying to find pivotal moments of time. Now, a pivotal moment in time doesn't necessarily only talk to us about good times. There are pivotal moments in time that trigger World War I, that triggers World War II. You can pick an example that many Jewish historians at times overlook, but I've always looked at it as an extremely pivotal moment of time. And that's the story of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is an individual who is the Jewish leader at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple. And without getting into the full details, because it's an entire talk in its own right, you could study a little bit more about it after this talk about the era of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. But understand that when the temple is destroyed, there is good reason, logical reason, to believe that Judaism came to an end. That the experiment of Judaism, the experiment of a chosen people, had reached its end, it's over. Because so much of Judaism focused on Israel, so much of the Torah focused on Holy Temple. When you come into the land, this is what you're going to do. And now there is no land, there is no Jerusalem, there is no Holy Temple. Is there a Judaism without Jerusalem? Is there a Judaism without Israel? Now, we know the answers because we are students of history thousands of years later. But what if you were there at that moment? Did the destruction mean God said goodbye to this Jewish experiment? Christianity believes that. Thus, there's a New Testament, because the Old Testament is old. That experiment didn't work. And therefore, everyone now becomes a member of the chosen people by accepting some new theory into their lives. How did the Jewish people react at that particular pivotal moment? Did we come to an end? And many within the Jewish camp believed it was that way, were it not for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who inspired and led the men of the Great Assembly to enact what we know today as Judaism. So much of how we practice today came about because of this convention of the men of the Great Assembly. Pivotal moment in time. Had that assembly not taken place, we can simply say we would not be here today. The reason I introduced this concept of pivotal moments of time and pivotal moments of Jewish history is because I strongly believe that if we were historians living hundreds of years from now, we would look back and we would say the period of time of the leadership of the Lubavitcher Rebbe is that pivotal moment of time that everything about Judaism and the Jewish experience changes because of this one individual. And I'm not just referring to Chabad Hasidim, and I'm not just referring to admirers of Chabad, I'm referring to everything that involves the Jewish world has changed because of this unique individual. Let me give you some background. When the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, first came to the shores of this country in 1940, he resided at first in a Manhattan hotel called the Greystone Hotel. And between the torture and the persecution that he'd suffered at the hands of the Russians and what the Nazis had put him through, physically, he was a broken man, confined to a wheelchair. He was not in the best of health. But spiritually, he was a powerful, powerful force of energy and determination. From the moment of his arrival, he began organizing yeshivas and synagogues and mikvahs and publication houses, building a dynamic infrastructure for Torah Judaism in the United States. Now, many of the leaders of American Jewry at the time, leaders of federations, leadership of establishment Judaism, came to see him, came to visit with him. And they said, look, Rebbe, you have a small group of your Hasidim that survive, that are here. Make yourself a shtibel, make yourself a little synagogue, and relax. Write your memoirs, we'll get you the best of medical care, and call this retirement. And the Rebbe would hear none of this. Relax. You think I came here for retirement? And those famous words that he said in Yiddish, America is nit anders, America will not be different. We will build Yiddishkeit, we will build Judaism in America, was laughed at by establishment Judaism. But the previous Rebbe was very, very clear. And that it's going to happen here. The torch of Judaism, the torch of Jewish learning and living, which was not able to be extinguished by the Bolsheviks, not able to be extinguished by the Nazis, and it will certainly not be extinguished by an American culture of unawareness and assimilation. We will carry the torch forward. The previous Rebbe defied the conventional wisdom, and of course, those schools and those Torah centers and those mikvahs and those publication houses did indeed open. When the previous Rebbe's son-in-law, the Rebbe of our generation, assumed the leadership of Chabad in 1950, that torch began to shine with even greater radiance and intensity. And he began sending forth shluchim, emissaries, to all far-flung corners of the earth, strengthening existing Jewish communities and creating new ones. Back in 1972, the Rebbe is approaching his 70th birthday. Again, some well-meaning disciple suggested to the Rebbe that now that he was getting on in years, perhaps it was time to slow down a little bit, cut some of those office hours. A vacation was long overdue. Treat yourself, 70th birthday. Relax a little bit. They should have known better. What did the Rebbe ask for as a birthday gift in honor of his 70th birthday? The Rebbe said, it's not my custom to ask for gifts, but I will make an exception this year, being that it's the big 70 number. I'm going to ask for a gift. No, it wasn't a cake, and it wasn't a vacation, and it wasn't a new car. The Rebbe asked for 70 new establishments of Jewish centers throughout the world. Now, at that time in 1972, there were a handful. For the Rebbe to ask for 70 organizations, 70 new centers to open, was huge. But the Rebbe believed that if he was to ask for it, it would be something that was doable. And indeed, at that gathering, on the 11th of Nisan, 1972, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was handed a list of 70 new institutions that were open in honor of that birthday. The Rebbe was very pleased. At that same gathering, a group of donors from California approached the Rebbe to present him a key to one of the new centers on the list. And they presented him a frame with a key. Here is the key to the center that we have opened in honor of this birthday. And the Rebbe said, if you're giving me the key, that means I have some say, I have some ownership say. I'd like it to be known that my house is to be open 24 hours a day. It should be open for every single Jew that ever needs it at all times of day and night. In fact, if any of you have been to the Chabad Center in San Diego on Montezuma Road, it was one of the centers that were open in honor of the birthday, there is no lock on the front door. It is always open. And then the Rebbe added to this group of individuals from California. He said, the day will come that this will become a pattern. It will become like a chain store. And just like wherever you go, there's a Macy's, wherever you go, there will be a Chabad center. Now, I'm sure this small group, this enclave, thought it was very nice hyperbole, very nice poetry, that Chabad one day would be like Macy's. It'll be like in every city you'll have a Chabad center. In the decades to follow, the Rebbe would continue to launch initiative after initiative, campaign after campaign, and project after project, and the consistent underlying message, carry the torch forward. Educate more children, reach out to more families, touch more lives, wherever they may be and whoever they may be. And that prediction that the Rebbe made on his 70th birthday would indeed be proven correct. Macy's can only dream of the coverage that Chabad centers now have throughout the globe. Every corner of the world. There's hardly a city, town, or village where Jews reside on the face of the earth where Chabad does not have a presence. The Rebbe's inspiration and his mandate continue to echo all across the global expanse. As Rabbi Tolushkin, who will be speaking this evening, concludes in his recently published book, Rebbe, we are bearing witness to the greatest renaissance of Jewish life in our history. There's been a lot of talk in the news about how everything is global today. The economy is not just in one place, but everything is global. What happens in one part of the world affects the entire world. There's global politics, global economics. But I have to tell you that for Chabad, this is not a new phenomenon. Chabad has been going global for 70 years. And about every single Farbrengen, every gathering, every encounter with the Lubavitcher Rebbe, one would hear these powerful biblical words beckoning. Ufaratzta, Yama, Vakedma, Vitzafona, Vanegba. These words are found in the book of Genesis. God speaks unto Jacob as he is about to go into exile, and he says, the day will come, you will spread forth to all corners of the world. And the Rebbe would say these words over and over to anyone that would listen. The time has come for us to spread forth this light. No part of the world should be off limits to us. After the Holocaust, the after effects of the physical nightmare led many to spiritual disillusionment, causing so many of our people to drift away from their heritage. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, however, would not allow the destruction of the past to become the destiny of our future. He wouldn't allow Hitler, Yamach Shemo, any such victory. He cried out to us, Ufaratsta, go out there, spread forth. Let's reignite the souls of our brothers and sisters throughout the world. Let's reach out to them with love. Let's reach out to them with acceptance. Let's reach out to them with non-judgmental welcome mats. Let's build Chabad houses and synagogues and schools and outreach centers in every corner of the world. The Rebbe called upon his Hasidim to share his vision for a brighter future for all of Israel. He looked us straight in the eye and he said, you can make a difference. You can impact a community. You can change a world. You, youth and teenagers and young married couples in their 20s and in their 30s, go out there, stand strong, strengthen yourselves, and spread out. The United States and Israel and Eastern Europe and Western Europe and Africa and Asia and North America, South America, East Coast, West Coast, go global. And at first tens, and then hundreds, and then thousands of these emissaries went forth upon every continent. Today there are over 4,000 Chabad centers dotting the globe. How did he do it? How did the Rebbe accomplish this? Well, just in the last few months, 3 different books came out talking about the life of the Rebbe, and I suggest that you read every single one of them. They're great books. Rabbi Telushkin, Rabbi Steinsaltz, Rabbi Miller. I'd like to focus on my talk today on one aspect of the Rebbe's approach. And perhaps I'll be able to express myself better with sharing some stories with you. A story is told about one of the great emissaries of the previous generation. His name was Rabbi Chaim Gutnick. Rabbi Gutnick was a very prominent and prestigious rabbi in Australia. He was president of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria. He was chaplain of the Australian Defence Force, and he was known as an extremely dynamic and eloquent speaker. When he spoke, he could paint a picture that you felt you were there at the scene. The story goes that once he was asked by the Rebbe to offer a lecture on the topic of mikvah, of taras hamishpacha, of family purity, in Melbourne. Rabbi Gutnick, for his part, was extremely apprehensive about the event. This was years ago, decades ago. Mikvah wasn't as popular as it is today. It was more taught privately to a few individuals who you thought were ready for it. But the idea of a public lecture and a public gathering on such a subject was not something that he thought about, or did he think would be successful, or did he think women would come to. But if the Rebbe asks you to do something, you do it. Not only do you do it, but you do it first class. So he books a beautiful hotel, let's say the likes of this hotel, and he makes a beautiful flyer, the likes of which like JLI makes for all of their programs, and he sends it out to every place he can possibly send it, and he puts advertisements in the newspaper announcing this important lecture on the subject of mikvah and family purity. The Rebbe asked him as well that after the event he would like a report from Rabbi Gutnick as to the success of the event. Now I want you to imagine a room as regal as this, as beautiful as this, beautiful chandeliers, and Rabbi Gutnick shows up to deliver the lecture. And it's what we call in rabbinic terminology a rabbi's worst nightmare. Let me explain what a rabbi's worst nightmare is. You see, our worst nightmare is not if no one shows up to an event. The reason that's not our worst nightmare is simple. No one knows that no one showed up to the event. So if no one knows, big deal. How was Minyan yesterday? It was great. It was great. How was the sermon? It was fantastic. I moved them all. No one was there. No one will know. Rabbi Gutnick walked into a room this size, and there's one woman sitting in the front row. The room is empty. One woman sitting, waiting for the talk. Now, I've delivered many a talks in my life, but it's difficult to get up at a podium like this, in a room like this, to talk to one woman in the audience. But he did. He advertised it. The Rebbe asked him to do this, and he followed through. And he delivered the talk with all the gusto and passion that he can possibly muster, and he gave his talk and he went home. Now he remembered that the Rebbe asked for one more piece of instruction here. I want a report after the event. And with tears in his eyes, he wrote this apology note. I'm sorry I let you down. I know how important this was to you. I tried, Rebbe, but I failed you. And he writes, only one woman, one single solitary woman showed up for this monumental address on the subject of mikveh. The Rebbe's response to him was one simple line. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our great leader, had one mother. That's it. How many women did it take to change the entire world? One woman. You're writing to me because you're dejected, because your ego was wounded, because only one woman was in this room, and you would think I'm disappointed? One woman? You changed the world last night. How do you know how this woman was inspired by your talk? How do you know? How do you know what changes this woman made in her life because of your talk? How do you know? How do you know if this woman didn't decide to go to the mikveh because of this talk? How do you know that she didn't decide to bring another child into this world because of this talk? How do you know who this child is going to be? How do you know who this child's grandchildren are going to be? How do you know how they will affect community after community throughout the world? How do you know? You don't. Your job is to do. One person at a time. One Jew at a time. It says in the Talmud, Lefichach Nivra Adam Yechidia, the reason God created the human being, Adam and Eve, singularly, individually, unlike other living things that were created in bunches, species at a time, is to teach us that one person equals the entire world. Every individual is an olam maleh, is an entire world to him or herself. And Kol HaMakayim Nefesh Achas Mi Yisrael, whoever sustains the soul of a single Jew, Ki'ilu Kiyem Olam Maleh, is reckoned as having saved the entire world. Every single Jewish soul is an entire world. Moses, our great leader, had one mother, Yocheved, one woman. Was responsible for shaping the direction and destiny of humanity for all time to come. This is the way the Rebbe changed the world. One person at a time, one individual at a time, one soul at a time. We are taught that if one Jew would have been missing at Mount Sinai, the Torah would not have been given, the Torah could not have been given. And if one Jew, be it in Milwaukee, in Kentucky, or in Japan, or the Netherlands, is missing from the table of Yiddishkeit, there's something missing from within us all. Those involved in the Rebbe's work always keep this perspective because this is the essence of it. As Isaiah prophesies concerning the era of the Messiah, the atem teluktu echad echad, that we will go out in this era coming close to the Messiah, and you will gather the Jewish people one by one. For the Rebbe, this was not just some lofty, poetic idea or a catchphrase. It was a very real philosophy that had very practical implications and applications. This became our mantra. This was the Rebbe's mission statement. one Jew at a time, one mitzvah at a time. There was a returnee to Judaism from a distant city that came to the Rebbe and thanked him. He said, "Thank you, Rebbe, for sending an emissary to bring Yiddishkeit, to bring Judaism and assistance to this little Jew living in a tiny, insignificant community." And the Rebbe immediately responds back, "There is no such thing as a little Jew, and there's no such thing as an insignificant community." To the Rebbe, every part of the world, bar none, is of monumental significance, and every Jew looms huge in the master plan of creation. There's a story that goes back a few generations to the Rebbe Rashab. This Rebbe had a chassid, a follower of his named Monya Mosenson. Monya was a diamond merchant by profession. And once when he was having a private audience with his Rebbe, with the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe said, "Monya, how are you today? How's your thoughts today?" And Monya said, "Rebbe, I have a question that's been bothering me. It's a personal question, but we're close, so I can tell you what I'm thinking. Rebbe, I think you're making a mistake. You spend so much of your time with simple folk. They drive you crazy. They come in, they're nudniks, they ask you this question. You're a Rebbe. The way it should work, if you don't mind me giving you my opinion, is you should surround yourself with the elite, with the brilliant ones, with the scholarly, and they can handle the rest of the folks." The Rebbe Rashab changed the subject, didn't address his question. And he started speaking about Monya's business, the diamond business. And he said, "Tell me, Monya, do you have any schorah with you? Do you have any merchandise with you?" And he says, "In fact, I do. I carry a little satch with me." He says, "Can I see some of your diamonds?" And he spreads out the diamonds on the table. And the Rebbe begins to look at the diamonds, and he picks up one and he says, "You know, from all the diamonds you put on the table, this one looks to me the best." Monya takes out his little glass, he begins to look, and he says, "Rebbe, with all due respect, no, that's not the one. This one is the most valuable on the table." The Rebbe says, "Let me take a look at it," looks at it, and says, "No, I don't agree with you. The one I picked is better." And they can begin this argument about which diamond is more valuable, and finally Monya says, "Rebbe, listen, when it comes to diamonds, you gotta be an expert. You gotta know what you're looking for. This color, this cut, this sparkle, this clarity. You go to school for this. You got to know what you're looking at." And the Rebbe says, "Monya, I understand. And when it comes to looking at Jewish souls, you also have to be an expert. I'm an expert on Jewish souls. I know what I see when I see them, and they're diamonds. They're precious diamonds." And this is how the Lubavitcher Rebbe looked at each individual. Diamonds. When the Rebbe looked at us, he saw within us not just who we are now, but the potential of who we can be and what we can be. You know, those in the medical profession know that doctors have this underlying guiding principle. It's called first, do no harm. The most important thing a doctor needs to know is, before anything else, don't hurt the patient more than the illness that the patient already has. Don't make matters worse. We too have this underlying guiding principle. First, write no Jew off. There is no such thing as a Jew that's too distant, too far away, too unaffiliated. Write no Jew off. Never give up on any Jew. I remember the very first Rosh Hashanah I spent in the Conejo Valley in California. It was 30 years ago. I was young. I was a bacher at the time. I was single. I was 20 years old. And I'm sent out to this place, Westlake Village, California, to conduct high holiday services. There was a nice crowd that showed up, and I explained to them that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, there is a tradition of visiting a body of water to symbolically cast away your sins. It's called tashlach. So I invite anybody that would like to stay after services are over. We'll walk to the lake in Westlake, and we will fulfill this tradition. And a nice group, about 20 individuals, decided to stay, and we're walking to the lake. As we're going towards the path that takes us to the lake, one of the individuals, his name was Gary, says, Moshe, there's a shortcut. If you follow me, I'll take you through a condominium section, and we'll cut through the parking lot. And if we cut through the parking lot, there's an aisleway that gets you down to the lake. It'll save us a few minutes of walking time. I'm new to the area. I say, sure, Gary, we'll follow you. And Gary starts taking us some fablonget away through some condominium place. And as we're walking in this parking lot on our way to the lake, I see there's this elderly woman. She's walking one step at a time with a walker. And as she sees me and this enclave walking towards her, she begins to cry. I don't know why she's crying. And she says, L'shana Tova. Obviously, that was a hint that she was Jewish. So I say, Shana Tova back, a good year, why are you crying? And she said, I just had surgery a week before Rosh Hashanah on my leg, and I can't walk. In fact, this is the first time I'm taking a few steps out of my house. And I have never missed a Rosh Hashanah service in my life. And today was the first time, Rosh Hashanah, I wasn't in shul. I'm crying. I'm sad. Okay, rookie rabbi, think what you're going to say to this woman. What do? You say, God should bless you. It's Rosh Hashanah. He should bless you with good health. And next year you'll be healthy again. You'll be able to go to shul, and it's going to be a good year. And all the blessings, right? You're doing what they taught you in rabbinical school. This is what you say. And I continue my way to the lake. And she continues her way in the parking lot. I'm standing there by Tashlach in front of the water, and suddenly it hits me. Very, very hard. I have this vision, and here's the vision. In the middle of all the tumult of Rosh Hashanah, there's a lot going on in the world. There are millions of Jews in synagogues in every part of the world. God is very, very busy on that day. He's got voices coming from all over the world. And suddenly God says, shh, quiet up here in heaven. Because he hears the cries of an elderly woman in Westlake Village, California. This woman is crying to him because she couldn't be in shul with him on this important day. This woman is crying because she couldn't hear the shofar for the first time since she was an infant. And she's crying to God. And God is so moved by the cries of this elderly woman that he responds to her in an inspirational way, in moving her soul by telling her, all you need to do is find the strength within you to get up, get out of your bed, go through that front door, and take a few steps. And I will arrange that an emissary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe would make his way by at precisely that moment. And even if he was going to go the regular way to the lake, I will have Gary the Nudnik drive him crazy about some shortcut, so that at the precise moment that you get out of bed and take those few steps, there will be this encounter. And certainly, a chassid raised within the environments of Chabad, an understanding of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, would know that wherever he goes on Rosh Hashanah, he carries a shofar with him, just in case there's an encounter with a Jew that didn't hear shofar that day. The woman does as this voice within her tells her. She finds the strength. She gets out of bed. She takes this walker. She goes and takes a few steps in a parking lot. And sure enough, there comes before her a delegation of 20 Jews led by this rookie rabbi who wishes her a good year, a healthy year. It's going to be good. But didn't have a chauffeur with him. Violated rule number 1. This is the thought I have as I stand before the lake, about to perform tashlach. And I say, oy vey, did I mess up? God's upset at me. The Rebbe's upset at me. This is all wrong. So as we leave the lake, I tell Gary, take me back exactly the way we came. I got to find somebody. And in my mind, I will find her, tell her to tell me where she lives. I'll run back to the shul, get the chauffeur, come back to her. But no luck. We go back the way, no lady there. Can't find her. I go back home. That night, can't sleep. All night long, just thinking about God arranged through divine providence that this woman's cry should be answered, and I failed her. Second day Rosh Hashanah comes. I get up in the sanctuary. Instead of giving the sermon that I had prepared, I tell over exactly the experience I had standing by the water, how I felt, how I couldn't sleep. And I plead with this new congregation of mine, who would like after services today to go on a mission with me? We have to find this woman. Most of the people thought this guy is absolutely nuts. A few of them were crazy enough to say, fine, I'll go with you. After davening is over, back to the parking lot of the condominium section. We're looking for a lady with a walker. There's no lady with a walker. All right, let's spread out. Let's start knocking on doors. We're knocking on doors. We're asking, do you know a lady that walks with a walker? No one knows a lady that walks with a walker because she never walked with a walker before. But we can't give up. We got to find this woman. And finally, someone says, I think I know who you're talking about. She had surgery last week. Jackpot. Wow. Yeah, that's the one. She lives right over there. Oh, you have no idea how good I felt. I go running to the door. There's a little mezuzah on the door. I knock on the door. A man opens the door. What do you want? I'm not interested. I'm not buying. I'm not selling. I have one little question. Did your wife have surgery a week ago? Yeah. Is she with a walker yesterday? Yeah. I met her yesterday, and I need to blow shofar for her today. I have the shofar. Slam. The door slams in my face. I knock again. I said, no, I'm not charging for the service. It's just a thing. It's a thing. God and your wife, and take a few steps. It's a vision. It's a vision thing, but I have to do this. I have to blow shofar for your wife. I have to. Go away from the door. I said, no, I really have to go away from the door, or I will call the police. Wow. The guy's upset at me, and God's really upset at me. So I begin dejectedly walking away from the house. Now, as I'm passing the back porch of this house, there are slats of wood that make up this back patio. And apparently the woman herself was sitting on this back patio and is able to see me walking by, and she calls out, is that you from yesterday? I say, wow, yes, it's me. And I tell her through this little crack in the wood what's going on, and yesterday, and I messed up, and I'm back today, and God loves you, and I'm here to blow shofar for you, and God heard your prayers throughout the whole world. He silenced the world. I'm here with the shofar. So come on in. What are you waiting for? The guy won't let me in. I'll just ignore him. That's my husband. Ignore him. He said he's going to call the police. Just come on in. Don't worry about him. So I go back to the door. The guy opens the door, and he runs into his bedroom now and closes the door. Okay. I'm going to go to the back patio, explain everything, what's going on. And I said, I'm here to blow shofar for you. But let me ask you a question. Did your husband go to shul today or yesterday? And she says, no, I didn't go, so he didn't go. I said, why is he so angry with the slamming of the door and the calling of the police? And she says, don't take it personally. He's very upset because our son became Orthodox. And ever since our son became Orthodox, he won't eat from our kitchen because our kitchen is not kosher. And to my husband, that's an insult. And so he's angry at Orthodox Judaism, who he feels has taken his son away from him. So I say, there is a solution out there. We could do a makeshift kitchen. Your son can create by bringing in his own toaster oven and his own microwave and his own burner and his own little pots. He can create his own little makeshift kosher kitchen and still come once a week, cook his own little dinner, and sit down with his parents at a table and have dinner. I will speak to him after Yantif to try to work this out. In the meantime, I say, if your husband didn't hear shofar and I'm about to blow shofar, would you mind if I go bring him out to hear shofar with you? I was crazy back then. She says, be my guest. So now I'm knocking on his bedroom door. And he says, what now? Hey, listen, I know why you're upset. I heard the story about your son. Tomorrow I'm going to call him up. I'll work it out with him. We'll make it work for you. But right now I'm about to blow shofar. I'm about to blow shofar, and you're in the house anyway, and you didn't hear shofar. Why don't you come on out and listen to shofar on Rosh Hashanah? The door opens, and he comes out. I'm about to blow the shofar, and he says, wait. What now? I need a yarmulke. I can't listen to the shofar without wearing a yarmulke on my head. So this same man who was going to call the police on me 15 minutes ago now says he can't listen to shofar without wearing a yarmulke. He gets his yarmulke, comes into the room, I'm about to blow the shofar, and he says, wait, my brother didn't hear shofar today either. Let me go call him and tell him to come on over here. And he's reaching for the phone, and I say, wait. You see, you can't use the phone on Rosh Hashanah. He says, I didn't ask you to use the phone. I'm using the phone. I use phones on Rosh Hashanah. I said, I know, but you're using it because I'm here, and it's just like I'm using it. There's no difference between me and you. All right, you know what? Forget it. I won't use the phone. I'll just go drive and get him. No, that can't exactly do that either. And I'm expecting him to hit me already. And I say, why don't you just give me his address? When I leave here, I'll walk over to his house and I'll blow shofar for him and for his family. He says, no, let's do one better. Let's go now together. We'll walk there together. We'll bring their whole family here. And together, we'll hear shofar both families combined. And that's exactly what we did. The man who was going to call the police walked a mile with me to his brother's house to bring his brother, his brother's wife, and their children over to his condominium in Westlake Village, California, to hear the shofar. And every year thereafter since, on our way to Tashlach, we had this reunion where this family started inviting everyone in that condominium section to listen to the shofar on our way to Tashlach. First, write no Jew off. I saw that so crystal clear in my first few weeks out there. If someone slams the door in your face, you think they're not interested. They're interested. There's just something going on. And P.S. to the story, we worked it out with his son, and the makeshift kitchen worked. And eventually the parents decided to make their whole kitchen kosher after all. Write no Jew off. Deep down there's a soul, and this is what the Rebbe taught us. It's there. You just have to find the way in. You just have to kindle that flame. The Chabad emissary in Utah is a friend of mine by the name of Rabbi Benny Zippel. There are Jews in Utah. It's not just for Mormons. But Rabbi Zippel has a number of other responsibilities. What you may not be aware of is that in Utah, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the Chabad Center, in the mountains of Utah, there are what we used to call growing up reform schools. Reform schools are if teenagers get in trouble with the law instead of putting them in prison, they were given an option of going to a rehabilitation center. And there are many of these rehabilitation centers in the mountains in Utah, and unfortunately many of them have many Jewish teenagers. There are no guards or gates at the door locking them in. It's very simple. You walk out that door and you leave before your term is up. You will be arrested by the police and you will be put into regular prison. So you have an option. This is an option that's offered you. Rabbi Zippel serves as the Jewish chaplain to all of these teen rehabilitation centers, and he travels a great distance to get there. I get a call on a Friday from Rabbi Zippel, and he says, Moshe, how far are you away from the city of Calabasas, California? Calabasas is a few minutes from me. Very good. Moshe, if I needed you to deliver a Shabbos candle to a woman that lives in Calabasas, could you do it today? I say, sure, no problem. He puts me on hold. Finally, he gets back on the phone with me, and he says, take down this phone number, call this woman on her cell, and arrange to bring her a Shabbos candle today. I say, okay, Benny, but what's this all about? And he gives me in short the story. He got a call from a woman. The woman said, you're the rabbi in Utah, right? He says, yes, I am. You must be the rabbi then that serves as the chaplain in this rehab center. He says, yes, I am. She says, I have a problem and I need your help. My daughter was in one of those rehab centers, and she ran away. And the police picked her up, and they put her in jail. And I called the director of the rehab center, and I'm asking and I'm begging for another chance for my daughter. And he says, no. Rabbi, I can't have my daughter in a regular prison with hardened criminals. I need your help. If you know this director, maybe you can talk to him. Maybe you can convince him to give my daughter another chance. Rabbi Zippel says, I happen to know this fellow quite well, and I think I will be successful in convincing him to give your daughter another chance. However, it's going to cost you. A service like this is going to cost you. She says, you name your price. He says, no, you're talking to a Chabad rabbi. We're not talking dollars and cents. We're talking it's going to cost you a mitzvah. What's that? It's simple. You agree to light the Shabbat candle Friday before sunset. I'll take care of your daughter. And the reason I ask you this is because it will be spiritually healthy for your daughter as well. It will bring blessings to you. It will bring blessings to the whole family. She says, I have to think about it. Says, you were about to write me a check for any amount I would say. Now you have to think about it? I have to think. I'm not a hypocrite. We're Reformed. We don't do those things. And he says, I'm asking you to light a candle for your daughter. Fine. Send me the kit in the mail. What do you need a kit for? You need to light a candle? I'll get you the blessings. Now send it to me in the mail. I don't have a candle. I don't know how to do this. So he says, and this entire time he never asked her where she lives. But he realizes there's Chabads everywhere in the world. So he takes the chance and he says, what if I can find someone to deliver the candle to you today? Would you light it today? And she says, how are you going to find? You're in Utah. It's a long ways from my house. But what if I do? If you can get someone to give me a candle, I will light it today. Deal. Where do you live? Calabasas, California. Goes into Chabad.org, finds a center, puts in the zip code. My name comes up as the closest Chabad center at the time. He calls me, puts me on hold. Would you deliver? I say yes. He goes back to her. Okay, we have a deal. Where's your address? She says, but I'm not going to be home all day. Give me your cell number. And she gives him the cell number. He gets back on the phone, gives me the cell number, says, call this woman. Give her a candle. He hangs up from her. I call her. She picks up the phone. I say, hello, this is your candleman delivery boy. She freaks out on the phone. I don't understand. How is this possible? It doesn't make sense. I said, just tell me where you are. I'll bring you a candle, show you all the works, exactly how you're going to light this candle, what time, all that stuff. She says, but I'm not going to be home. I said, tell me, where are you right now? She says, I'm not in Calabasas. I said, where are you? She said, I'm in a small little city. What city? I'm in the Gura Hills. Oh, that's interesting. Where in the Gura Hills are you? I'm at a gas station. So she's having this entire conversation while she's on her cell phone in the gas station. Where is the gas station? She says it's on Canwood Street on Reyes Adobe Road. I said, very interesting, very interesting. This is what I want you to do. Finish putting gas in the car, close the cap, pay for your gas, and then come out of the gas station and make a right turn and go 100 feet. I will be the guy there with a candle in my hand. This entire conversation that she was having with a rabbi in Utah was taking place 100 feet away from our Chabad house in Agora Hills. And she walked in shaking. And she says, I now know that God is watching over our family. And God is watching over my daughter. This was what the Rebbe envisioned. Have centers everywhere in the world. Have people everywhere in the world reach out. No Jew should ever feel lost again. We can do it. And this is what the Rebbe urged our generation. Go out there, every single place in the world, and invite people in, one Jew at a time. I got to skip a lot of stuff because I just got the 5-minute notice. There was this prominent Belzer Chassid, a Chassid who, from a different Hasidic sect who lived in Israel. He wasn't very fond of Chabad. He was an outspoken critic of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he was particularly critical of the fact that the Rebbe would encourage his Hasidim to interact with quote-unquote non-religious Jews, Freie Yidden. He didn't like it. Why are you wasting so much time? Why is the Hasidim wasting so much time with those types of Jews? And he would write articles against Chabad and against the Rebbe. He would speak in his synagogue against the Rebbe. As it turns out, his own son started drifting away from Judaism until the point that his son cut off the long curls, gave up the Hasidic garb, gave up Jewish practice, and became a totally secular Jew living in Israel. You can imagine how much pain was brought to his father. As time goes on, this individual's in a bus station in Tel Aviv. He's approached by a Chabad Chassid. Excuse me, would you like to put on tefillin? And what does he say? No! Now we know that when someone gives us the bark no, that's the guy. That's the one you want. The bark no means, something's going on here. So when the guy gave the no, he said, okay. And he continues going after him. Why not? Why not? It'll just take a minute. He says, look, I know I'm not interested. And finally the guy says, look, I've been out here for hours. It's been a rough day. I've had very few customers. When we all come back after this day is over, we compare notes. How many did you get? How many tefillin did you get? I'm losing so bad. Could you just do me a favor? This is nothing to do with you, nothing to do with God. This is about me. It's a personal favor. Stranger to stranger. Put on tefillin today. And this guy was moved by that plea. He says, fine. He takes the tefillin, he puts it on Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, he starts rattling off the prayers. He knows it quite well. So the fellow's intrigued. And as he begins to say Shema, this ex-Belzer Chassid breaks down crying because it all came back to him. And this Chabad follower is there to embrace him and to talk to him. And to make a very long story short, because we got the 5-minute notice, he makes his way back to Judaism. And you can imagine the thrill of his father having his son return to Hasidic life, to observant life. But he realizes that all these years, he's knocked Chabad and knocked the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And look how it was dear for him in his time of need. So simply to write a note of apology to the Rebbe wasn't enough. He did the right thing. He got on a plane. He flew to New York. And he wanted to personally express to the Rebbe his apologies for all these years of criticism. And the Rebbe hears him, and the Rebbe says, I want you to know something. You know the pain that you felt when your son left the fold, when your son walked out on traditional Judaism. You know what that felt like. You know the joy that you felt when your son came back home. You know that joy. I want you to know, the Rebbe says, I feel that same pain for every Jew on the face of the earth that is not involved yet in their own heritage. But I also feel that joy every time there's a single Jew in the world that does that one single mitzvah. That's the legacy of the Rebbe. I have 2 more stories. Hopefully we'll get it into the 5-minute mark. If not, I'll get fired. That's okay. A few years ago, we had a guest over. We had a guest coming to our house. And the family, she asked me right before Shabbos, is it okay, we have a cousin visiting from Chicago, of all places. Is it okay if we bring her along? And I said, sure. And this woman from Chicago, she was 51 years old, came to our house, and she's sitting at the edge. You know when you have a guest that wants to sit at the edge, that doesn't want to get involved, that feels this is not her place. You can just pick up the vibes. She didn't want to be here, but she had no choice. And beautiful Friday night dinner, everything goes on. At the end of dinner, she makes her way closer to me, and she begins asking me questions about Judaism, various different questions. And then she tells me her story. And her story is a painful story. There were immigrants from Russia. They came over when she was a little girl. And the very first Rosh Hashanah that they were in America, her father explains to his young children, this is America. We're able to be proud Jews here in America, unlike in Russia where we have to hide it. And over here, today is Rosh Hashanah, it's the Jewish New Year, we're going to go to temple together. He takes his machzor that he had brought from his old town, from Russia, and he takes his family all dressed in the finest of clothing, and they make their way to the temple, only to be greeted by someone at the door asking for their tickets. He doesn't know what tickets mean. Sure, what do you mean tickets? Rosh Hashanah, what tickets? And the guy says, you need to have reservations here, you got to be a member. And I'm saying, no, I'm Jewish. Russia, kids, we just got out. I got my own mosque. Sorry, you can't go in. You don't have reservations. You don't have tickets. My father was so humiliated, so embarrassed, so insulted in front of his children. We never walked into the synagogue that day, and we never walked into the synagogue for the rest of my father's life. He despised Judaism. He called it a bunch of names. He became a self-hating Jew. He mocked the religion. It's all about money in America. It's just one big country club. It's a fraud. That's the way I was raised. I have not been to one Shabbos table in my life. This is the first time I've ever been to a Shabbos table. And I hear and I'm listening to what's going on, and I realize that my father had it all wrong. This wasn't Judaism, what he experienced. This is real. But what he saw was artificial. And now my father just passed away months ago, and I can't even correct him. And so I explained to her, why do you think you're here? You think you're here because someone asked you to come? You're here because your Father up in heaven realizes all this and did what he can to push you so that you can start getting involved now, so that you can fix an error of 45 years in the making. And it was a very nice conversation. Anyway, let's go on to my sleepless night problems. I'm sorry to anyone that lives in Chicago, but you were the focus of my dream that night. This woman lived for 2,000 Shabbosim. Not a single Jew in Chicago invited her to a Shabbos table 2,000 times. You're telling me she didn't interact with other Jews in all these years? You're telling me she wasn't online in the supermarket next to a Jew who could have said, excuse me, how are you today, and started a conversation? You told me that in business she never interacted with another Jew. In school she never interacted with another Jew. In high school and in college she never interacted. How many interactions were there, and not one invitation to a Shabbos table in 51 years? And as I'm picking on the Chicago Jewish community that night, I say, hey, Bryski, you think there are no Jews in Agoura Hills, California, that have never been to a Shabbos table? In every city, in every part of the world, there are people out there. All they're waiting is for your invitation. They're waiting for you to reach out to them. You don't have to be a Chabad rabbi. You don't have to be a Chabad Rebbetzin to do this. You have to be a caring Jew, willing to welcome a fellow Jew back to their own heritage. One Jew at a time, one mitzvah at a time. And this is the Rebbe's legacy and mission to each and every single one of us. Go out there. The world is ready. The Jewish world is ready. They want it. They need it. They just need your welcoming arms. My closing story. It's a story about the Baal Shem Tov. It was a cold night. It was a rainy night. The disciples of the Baal Shem Tov were sitting in the study hall. They were engrossed in lofty and mystical matters. The Baal Shem Tov was teaching a Hasidic discourse. Everyone is paying attention to every word, and there's a big storm out there. And this wagon driver, this peasant, is stuck. His wagon gets stuck in the mud, and his horse is trying to schlep the wagon out of the mud, and the horse can't do it. I'm finishing. And as he's trying to push, he's trying to get this horse out of the mud. He realizes his horse is going to die if he keeps trying. Is there anyone out there that can help? He sees a light. The light is in a room. There are still people up. So he goes to that house. He opens the door and he sees a group full of people. And he says, folks, I need just a few of you to help me for a few minutes. My horse is stuck in the mud. Just a little push. These guys are listening to the Holy Baal Shem Tov. They're listening to words of Hasidic discourse. And they wave at him, get out of here. Get out of here, you peasant. Mud and horses, come on. Leave us alone, we can't help you. He goes back out and he's trying to push and the horse is trying, and again, to no avail. And he comes back to that same study hall and he says, folks, please, just a few minutes of a few of you, just help me. And they yell, we can't help you, to which he responds, the peasant says, Moshish da nechozish. Can, you can. The question is, do you want to? Don't tell me you can't help me. Tell me you don't want to help me. But you can do it. The Baal Shem Tov stops his talk. And he tells us, Hasidim, what you just heard from that peasant is more important than anything I can teach you. You can. The question is, do you want to? The Rebbe told this story over and over and over in the 1950s. Come close. And the Rebbe urged each and every single one of his followers, including Rabbi Epstein. You can. The question is, do you want to? He told a group of Hasidim that survived the Holocaust, we're going to take over a world. We're going to inspire a world. And they said, we can't. And the Rebbe said, remember the words of the present. I say to each and every one of you, go out there and inspire one more Jewish family to do one more mitzvah. Don't say you can't, because you can. The question is, do you want to?
Thank you, Rabbi Bryski.